Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories is one of them games that is just pretty divisive within its community. Some love it, some hate it, which is kinda strange because I really do think this game has a lot to offer both in story and gameplay. Although I do get it, when I was first playing through I fucking hated it as well, like most people. I mean, look at YouTube as an example. I searched up "Is Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories a bad game?" into YouTube, and you see that a lot of people seem to dislike this title in particular. And I know that other titles, especially K3 and games like Recoded, get a lot of shit. I know this isn't the only game that has these types of videos on it, obviously, but I do find that in particular Rechain gets shit on more, or even skipped altogether because people just seem to give up and not even finish it. I've seen several channels who have played through the entirety of Kingdom Hearts franchise, and whenever I check out their time on Rechain, they play it for a bit and then watch the rest via cutscenes on YouTube. Which is more than fair enough if they don't like it, but I really do believe they are missing out on a hidden gem of a game here. As much as you have to push yourself through it at first, I would say it's more than worth it. And it's such a shame because if it was only a little bit more user friendly, or maybe had an easier explanation or something, I think this could have been a fan favorite. Here is why I think this game is underrated. The combat is super unique. I've never seen a game out there like Rechain. I'm sure similar games may exist, but this specific Kingdom Hearts card style combat system that required you to move about and do all your typical third person action game stuff was honestly kind of amazing. You had your typical abilities like jump and roll from the previous title, but all the attacks were done through cards that were built within your deck. As you level up, you're able to choose from more health or more card points, with occasional new card abilities known as slates, and all of these affect the gameplay in a pretty major way. What choice do you go with? With more card points, you get more allowance on how many cards you may bring into a battle, as all cards have various cost points. Or with more health, your survivability goes up. You can make it as easy or as hard as you want it because the game allows you to be creative in your approach, specifically in combat. Essentially, the game boils down to this. You get your cards that you can cycle through in the bottom left corner, and there's a few things you can do. A regular one-time use of the card, whether it's a keyblade or a spell, it will simply use up that card and perform the move. After you use up all your cards, there's a sort of reload card that needs to be activated, and then after some time, all the cards will come back. This can be done as long as you're in a battle. However, the more times you reload your cards, you'll have to go through more cycles to get all your cards back, so keep that in mind. There are also other ways to get cards and even lose cards within battles, but just starting off, I wouldn't worry about that stuff. And even though you could use all of the cards individually, where things get the most interesting is that there is a mechanic in the game where you can stack cards in combat to combine them into stronger attacks, like fire plus fire would make Fira and so on. But this is where the slates come in. These abilities usually require 3 stacked cards in a row to perform. Some can be performed with just 2, so if you ever want to know exactly how to perform something, there's a logbook in the game with all the slates with an explanation on how to perform them. In the background of this video, you'll be able to see some of them and how they work. These are really powerful attacks that you'll have to use in order to deal with some of the more tough enemies in the game. Also, keep in mind that the maximum number of stock cards is 3, and if the values don't add up to the requirement, it may just use them individually in a row. Some of these slates are absolutely broken, to the point where honestly the game becomes kind of a piss take even on proud difficulty. The best abilities are often not the most obvious choices, so experiment as you see what works for you, and if you're still struggling, then there are plenty of videos on YouTube that showcase them. My personal favorite is Lethal Frame, as it just annihilates pretty much all the bosses. And this is just a scratch of the combat experience because there's so much more that I could talk about. Summons, character cards that give bonuses and skills, party member cards that let you team up with Donald or Goofy. There's a lot to enjoy here, and the best advice I can give is to be patient with it. There are points where it will definitely annoy you, but there's an approach to every fight, and creating deck presets to suit wherever you need can easily be created from the deck builder, so I'd say stick with it, and naturally you will understand how to approach some of the fights in the game. This is just a personal opinion of mine, but I think the story is interesting, and it's quite relevant to the plot as well. We get introduced to some major characters, and this is the kind of start for Organization 13 as well. To be as spoiler-free as possible, basically you enter this place known as Castle Oblivion, and as you play through the game, things slowly get more trippy. Sora starts losing some of his memories, and trust me, memories are a big part of this game, like the name would suggest. In this game, your objective is to climb the floors in the castle and just see what is going on with the place. Why are things like this? Why is Sora losing his memories? These are some of the crucial points that happen here, and if you don't see it through, it kind of makes KH2 really confusing. I would say this game has a satisfying final boss, and with some good twists paired with well-voiced cutscenes, it's up there with some of the more interesting Kingdom Hearts games. The worlds. This game doesn't have traditional world navigation like all the other Kingdom Hearts games, and even though they are reused from number 1, I do feel like the areas or the worlds you visit were done in such a unique way that it just adds to the overall experience and the uniqueness of the game that just hasn't been done anyway close in any other Kingdom Hearts game. Sticking to the theme of using cards for everything, you gain these map cards from enemies that really alter the way a room functions. This is kind of related to the thing I said earlier, where there's a lot of choice and you can make it easier or harder on yourself. The cards you choose affect 3 things: the size of the room, the amount of Heartless there are, and the specialty that makes it different from other rooms. For example, here's the simplest map card. Tranquil Darkness is a medium-sized room with small amount of Heartless. The description here is what makes it unique from other map cards. In this case, only a few Heartless will appear. Also, if we look down the list, another card could be Looming Darkness, medium amount of Heartless with a large room. What makes this room interesting is that enemies will attack relentlessly and often drop enemy cards. Enemy cards are also another type of card that can be used in combat, but anyway. This just shows the amount of variety and choice you have in picking what kind of challenge you are looking for. If you are having trouble in a certain floor, try some of the easier rooms and level up a bit in them. Or you could even go back to an earlier floor and fight the enemies there, if you really are struggling. The variety really stands out when you look at how many options you have to choose from, even rooms that don't even have enemies and just contain treasure. There will come a time where any of these map cards can come useful, so I really love this aspect of the game, and an area where it doesn't get enough credit in my opinion. Another thing in the game is that you can also play as Riku after you finish the game. After you're done playing with Sora, you get a new option to play as Riku, and playing as Riku gives a slightly different take on how Sora uses his card abilities, as Riku is full-on offensive, so if you found Sora's playstyle quite challenging, or maybe slow or boring, you might find that Riku's playstyle suits you more. Playing as Riku is probably even easier, and with it being around 6 hours, it's really not a drag, and fills in the gaps that you might miss out on in Sora's story, so it's also very much worth playing, especially since you can try out all of his cool dark abilities. With everything that I mentioned so far, it's pretty clear that the game is filled with content, and even though it can get pretty repetitive, you always feel a sense that you are making good progress, as everything you do will result in benefiting your character. Whether it is stronger cards and new abilities or better stats, this sort of gameplay loop is something that I really enjoyed and could easily jump in and come back to. I have even went to the lengths of getting the platinum, because once it hooked me, I really wanted to explore the whole game. One thing that I also want to touch on here is the music. It's still just as good as any other Kingdom Hearts game, so that's a huge plus for me. And if you like the music in this series, then it's just great. Yeah, Twilight Town. It's one of the points. I know, a bit weird, but for good reasons. I fucking love this world, no matter what KH game it is, and this is where it had its debut, so I had to include it. It's a really cool segment of the game, as all the worlds that we are supposed to go to are part of Sora's memories. However, this world is sort of out of place. It's appearing for the first time, and it really adds to the mystery of the game. And the music, oh man, I could listen to this specific theme all day long. I've got to give them props for at least adding one unique world into the game, and honestly, it's probably the best one there is. Aesthetically and everything, it just hits different. I don't care what anyone says, this world slaps. Everything that I described so far is why I love it so much, and I kinda wonder, why is there so much negativity surrounding this game? I mean, yeah, it seems complicated at first, but over time, the game mechanics come at you one by one, so it's not really that overwhelming, and as any other game, it has a learning curve. With some awesome moves and unique features, I reckon if you didn't like this game and you gave up on it, then maybe give it another shot. I really gave it its time, and once all the dots connected, it felt like a completely different experience. But that's kind of my view on it, and seeing others have their own preference is interesting in its own way too. Ultimately, it's a personal preference, and I just really like this title. Would be cool to see if they do anything like this ever again, but until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!